Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, coming at you live to talk about episode 4 of the anime series, Just Because. And, primarily, this is a series about subtlety. Subtlety in characterization, subtlety in the way characters behave, their mannerisms, things like that. And I have found it pretty, gorgeous to look at. I really haven't had much to complain about animation wise. And I've actually, on the coattails of having watched this episode, which I did find to be, for my tastes, a little bit, frustrating to watch. I have found out that there is some drama unfolding behind the scenes in the production of this show. And that is kind of a shame. It all has to do with the director being somewhat demanding, it seems to be, and being very much a perfectionist and trying to keep this show true to his vision. And, it seems that there might be setbacks that could occur. We may see episodes delayed down the line. I think they said, he was actively storyboarding the eighth episode when he had sort of a Twitter breakdown, a meltdown. Just being kind of an a-hole or something like that, sort of reacting to the fact that things are just not getting done as fluidly as he wishes, and the studio that's producing this show apparently is in its infancy. They did Gamers in the previous season, which I thought was pretty good, and I saw some people, I always hear people, taking down the animation and saying, oh, the animation was wonky and it didn't look that good. And I don't know if I'm not that scrutinizing, but usually I don't find that. Like, it has to be some kind of glaring problem in the animation of a given anime or anything really, for me to really notice that and be taken out of the experience. And I didn't really experience that too much with Gamers. As well as this series, there have been some nitpicks and things that I've heard in a blog post that references this whole affair, which I will include in the description below. They're talking about wonky melting animation and things like that, inconsistencies, and I really haven't noticed too much, if anything at all, really, anything really glaring. I've mostly been focusing on the characters and the characterization and the story and the realism behind the characters. And that is where I think it excels as a series, as a story. That is what has had me, intrigued with it and constantly coming back to it and constantly wanting to come on and talk about it. And so it's kind of a shame that it seems like all of this is surrounding the director himself being a perfectionist, being kind of an a-hole, and having this brash expectancy with the staff that are trying to put these episodes together. Like, why is this not happening the way I want it to happen, as swiftly as I want it to happen? Crack the whip, seems to be the implication, at least the suggestion of what's going on behind the scenes. He has this perfectionist vision, and it's just not meeting that quota for him personally, and so there's some problems, and that is sad, because I like what we've gotten thus far in this show. It is somewhat of a passive watch. It is somewhat of a again, it's a character piece more so than it is flashy and things like that. It's subdued. It takes its time. And there is some element of that can be problematic. That's partially what I had frustration with in this episode, the fourth episode, was that it's just like they're really taking their time, and in that stretching of time, nothing is really developing out of it. I could understand taking your time, taking a beat, catching your breath, whispering hints towards some progressive aspect of the story, but when nothing is actually moving forward, it's just kind of abrasive to me to watch. I want to see a culmination. I want to at least know that there is some sort of forward progression. And we get it a little bit toward the beginning of this particular episode. Now I'll be transitioning to talking about the episode by itself. Haruto ends up, as we left off in the previous episode, he ends up being aided by Eita and Natsumi. Natsumi brings a cat. He needs to be friendly with dogs, and she brings a cat. Or rather, Kamiya brings the cat, and Natsumi brings the dog, a golden retriever-looking dog, that kind of thing. And so Kamiya brings the cat, Natsumi brings the dog, and he's trying to be friendly with the dog. He's still terrified. They get one good like cell phone snap of him with the dog, looking like, scared but happy at the same time. He's like, you know, like tentatively smiling, and then the dog is like running after him, and it seems like the dog is just playing. It's not on the attack or vicious in any way, shape, or form, but he's terrified. He's being chased around. He's terrified, and he ends up getting a thumbs up via text response from the girl he's doing this all to begin with for, Hatsuki. She's like, awesome, good. You're making progress. You're getting friendlier with animals. Specifically dogs. And so he's like happy about that. And I'm like, okay, this is a little bit of progression. Then he's like, okay, well, we're going to go to the shrine for New Year's, and it's going to be a friend, like all of our group of friends kind of affair. And, can we actually talk about it? Like, I'd like to be alone with Hatsuki kind of thing. And that's how they orchestrate it. So he's alone with her, and he wants to try to get up the courage to ask her out. And it takes forever to get to the point where anything then meaningful happens again. And the entire time this is going on, you have Eita and Natsumi interacting, and this comes after Natsumi had been talking with Haruto, which is her love interest, who doesn't have any interest in her whatsoever. She's sad because Haruto isn't giving her the time of day. He'd rather go out with Hatsuki and everything like that. So after this, he broaches the point, Haruto, that is to say, he broaches the point, well, do you like anybody? And she's kind of reserved, and because she's talking to the guy she likes, she's like, no, maybe, there's somebody I have an interest in, liked him a long time, doesn't look like it's going anywhere, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, and Haruto's oblivious because he's thinking Hatsuki, Hatsuki, Hatsuki. And so Natsumi here, she ends up hooking up with Eita again later. And I guess he may have started a ball rolling in her mind, because Haruto in that moment, being oblivious to the fact that she likes him, suggests, oh, is the guy you like Eita? Well, later on, when she and Eita are hanging out, and I think her other friend or whatever is hanging out with them, they decided they're going to, still go out and hang out on this New Year's Eve or whatever it is, while Haruto and Hatsuki go to the shrine. They were all going to go together, but they made up excuses as to why they're not going to go with Haruto and Hatsuki, so they can have some alone time. But they decided to hang out anyway. And, there's some harsh, again, to use the term, abrasive relationship stuff going on between Eita and Natsumi that just, it's like, what the hell? We do finally, by the end of this episode, we do get Haruto making his confession finally to Hatsuki, and she turns him down. Similarly so, because of the abrasive quality, the interpersonal connectivity going on there, that's just not quite meshing, not quite matching up between Eita and Natsumi. Of course, Natsumi is the girl Eita likes, but she likes Haruto, so that's not going to work as far as he's concerned. But he's been supportive of her. He's been all-knowing about this interest she's had in Haruto for a very long time. And at one point, they're talking about, they get like fortunes out of a, push-button box or whatever like that. And she gets, oh, good luck will come eventually. And he gets straight out good luck. And they're talking about that. They're like debating about that. And she gets upset with him because he brings up Haruto and how she feels about that. She's kind of like, mind your own business. This is not your business. This doesn't involve you. And it's involved him all along, because he knows she has that interest. She's constantly threatening him, don't you ever tell anybody about my interest in Haruto and all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of a pain in the ass, because he then blurts out, well, I've cared about you all along. And then he kind of reserves himself, and he's like, oh, I shouldn't have said that, that kind of thing. And because of what Haruto told Natsumi earlier, oh, is the guy you like, was questioning her, is the guy you like Eita, there's a passing look between them as Eita decides to just leave her and go home, where it's almost like a dawning realization, like, oh, does he actually maybe like me, kind of, sort of, I don't know. And, it just kind of frustrated me. And, the whole reason she even likes Haruto to begin with is because he gave her an eraser in school. yet another anime where somebody, I think it was Koito Uso, where somebody gave a girl an eraser and they were smitten with that guy from then on out. I'm gonna go down to like my local public supermarket or my local Walmart. I'm gonna start buying erasers in bulk and just handing them out to girls I like. with how much they end up infatuated with the guys who give them these erasers. And that's all it took for Natsumi to be so interested in Haruto and being blind to the fact that Eita actually likes her and, stuff like that. And although I think, as I say, she probably figured it out by now. Hopefully, maybe. I don't know. I'm just speculating. But it looked like the look she gave him as Eita was leaving her behind. Maybe she's like, oh, is there more going on here? He just said he cared about me. He's been, supporting me, even though I'm getting nowhere with Haruto. So does Eita, maybe he has an interest? You can only read so much into what is going on because of the subtleties, which I feel are the more, excellent parts of the show, the subtleties, the very humanisms, very human humanisms in the interactivity, in the way the characters react and their mannerisms and things like that. There is a realism to it overall. The pacing could be a little bit better. And, like just overall, I was left kind of dissatisfied by this episode, mildly frustrated by it. And then to go on and read that there is all this drama going on behind the scenes, it's just like a 1-2 punch of, oh man, this kind of sucks, The show doesn't suck, at least to me. It's passive. It's taking its time to get where it's going. And there's good and bad in that. This episode probably, I did say after watching the last episode, not really a whole hell of a lot happened in it. And I was borderline to the point of, is there anything that really bears discussion? And I was kind of feeling that by the end of this episode as well. Like, with the exception of how things turned out in the end, and that funny business at the beginning with Haruto and the dog. But with how everything else, flowed in this episode, and there wasn't really much to say anything about. Until it ended with Haruto, being turned down by Hatsuki, and that sort of divisive quality between Eita and Natsumi in the end. Like, those were the only things that really struck out to me as worth even bothering to talk about. And that's not enough for a whole video, And then the subsequent blog post that I read about the trouble behind the scenes, that made this much more something I could come on and talk about. So I am still enjoying the show. I am enjoying the characterization. I'm enjoying the story, the plot between them all. I love the visual appeal of it. I love the animation. I love the backgrounds. It's so highly detailed and meticulous for the most part. I do hear people nitpicking. I have heard, criticisms that the anime is not so spectacular all the time, and I haven't noticed that at all for my part. And then to find out there is this trouble that, we might hit a delay, a speed bump at some point, it just kind of depresses me a little bit. And it leads me that much more to thinking I may have said this in an earlier video, but I think this particular series would be much better marathoned than watched episodically every week. But I'm still watching it. I'm still going to watch it. It remains to be seen whether or not anything will happen in the next episode that will warrant me coming on and wanting to talk about it. So I leave that open that, I may discontinue talking about it until something spectacular happens again within the show. That kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, it has been enjoyable. I like the characterization. I like the characters. I am intrigued by the coming of age, will they, won't they get together or not get together, all that kind of stuff. And I'm curious to see how this is going to play out in the lives of the characters. I really like the animation. I have said that the show reminds me a little bit of Hibike Euphonium, not only in the character design and the visual style, but also the pacing, the sort of calm, subdued nature of it. The only thing that's severely lacking is the artistic aspect of the music, the band class and everything like that, as was the case in Hibike Euphonium. So overall, I mean, it was a mildly okay episode. Some interesting things happened in it by the end, but not anything to write home about. And now I'm just sort of tentative about my future coverage of it. I will be watching it, but I don't know if I'll be covering it. It'll remain to be seen. And whether or not, it peters out spectacularly or failing in all possible ways with this behind-the-scenes drama. So I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 4, just because if you've seen it as well, if you've heard any of this, behind-the-scenes drama stuff, you can read the blog post, as I said, will be in the description below. And just let me know your thoughts on the series on whole. If you've been enjoying it, love it or hate it, anything goes. Our POVs can certainly disagree. You may have thought this was the best episode yet, and I'd love to hear why, that kind of thing. And yeah, otherwise it'll be pretty much it for me on this. If this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.